this thing that use that one when you get a chance, Chris.
And we'll switch gears just a little bit, still in the context of soil health, of course, focusing on soil health. We're just doing a little bit of an expansion from just a vegetable focus and sheep focus into some pastures, because that's certainly within our diversified region. We certainly have a lot of folks who are raising animals, and some people doing animals and crops. So I'll just let Adam Peterson start off with the Thurston Conservation District, and I'll follow up. And we'll try to be lightning-like and interesting.
Thanks, everyone. My name is Adam Peterson. I'm a senior GIS and science specialist with Thurston Conservation District. I'll be talking about some of the challenges and opportunities for pasture nutrient management in the context of the soil testing program at Thurston Conservation District. Should I present from there? All right. So soil testing at Thurston Conservation District, like most conservation districts, we offer soil testing services to the public. And the goal of our soil testing program is to provide accessible interpretation of results to our cooperators that are specific to their own crop or plant type. On the right is an example of one of our interpretive reports. And really the goal is how do we make numbers meaningful? How do we make numbers like 173 parts per million potassium mean something in terms of actionable guidance? So we do soil testing for a large number of crop or plant types. I think we offer 16 or 17 currently in our form, anything from vegetables, cut flowers, pawpaws, but pasture and hay make about 18 to 20% year to year of the samples submitted to us. Despite the small proportion of samples, we have fairly large ranches in our counties, and so the smaller percentage probably represents a much larger proportion of acreage that is managed for nutrients. So with our soil testing program, we have an online submission form where people can insert information about their management strategy. So we want to make sure that the recommendations that we're providing people match, whether they're conventional or organic, and we want to provide fertilizer recommendations that match their scale, whether that's pounds per acre or pounds per 1,000 square feet for some smaller fields. For some of our other crops, pounds per 100 square feet, a lot more suitable. So pulling from the WNSDA Ag Land Use Layer, which is a great web map showing what's being grown throughout the state, the raising resource, is able to pull the different crop or plant types in Thurston County. And so pasture, hay, silage land make up around 80% of the active agricultural land in Thurston County. And that's a trend you see in many counties in Western Washington. By far the most common form of agricultural land. And interestingly, these pasture land has diverse soil properties. Here on the right, I took NRCS soil survey data and looked at the fields in the ag land use layer for pasture, for hay land, and looked at the water holding capacity in it. And here on the left, this is a histogram. So here on the very left is the lowest category. So we have some really well-drained soils that have lower moisture holding capacity. Many are traditional South Sound prairie areas, so there's minimal water storage. Some have higher though, and so there's a diversity of water capacity out there. Irrigation, most pastures in Thurston County are unirrigated, a small percentage are irrigated. So it means that this water holding capacity is often determining how productive a pasture can be. So there are variable forage yields, and that results in variable irrigation needs to meet that production. Just bringing it back to the motto for the soil fund, finding diverse solutions for diverse soils. Pastures are diverse, pasture soils are diverse, and so the question that I want to tackle here is how do we find diverse solutions for these diverse pastures? So one of the first challenges is nitrogen. That's going to vary based on things like your grass legume ratio. If you have a lot of clover in your pasture, that's going to provide some of the nitrogen that you might need. Another is the maximum yield potential. That's going to vary based on your irrigation, soil type that we just talked about, all of the other factors as well that we'll often have a conversation with. Some people will have livestock on their pasture, so they're going to be having manure deposited on the land. And then for others, a lower input strategy often is a more popular approach. It makes a lot of sense for many different reasons. We ask certain questions up front on our soil submission form. So, for instance, there's people want to manage things organically or conventionally, so we can break down the report recommending fertilizers that match their preferred strategy. And for other factors, things like pasture productivity, that can vary based on management strategy. So maybe a pasture is irrigated or it's not. I think that's changed. And so by providing multiple options, like here on the right, you see a table linking out different levels of productivity, they can fertilize to match that. So if they want to take a lower input approach, we provide them with the ability to match that with management options. Often, organic is probably the most popular approach, and often the most locally available and full source of nitrogen is manure. And manure is quite diverse. Here on the right is from the fertilizing with manure and other organic amendments handout, very amazing resource. And you can see on the right, manure values can vary considerably. And so it's difficult for us to make generic recommendations for manure when it varies so much across the spectrum. And so we're often making recommendations for people to test manure in advance. So we're able to calibrate an application rate for what their pasture needs are. Another challenge is that manure supplies other nutrients as well, not just nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium, micronutrients. And so we have to take that into consideration as well. High soil phosphorus is very common in Thurston County. A majority of the samples submitted to us have ample phosphorus. And you see here on the right, here's a map of phosphorus produced in our county versus the cropland's ability to use it up, and we are very well supplied. One challenge that I keep in mind is that high soil phosphorus may have negative impacts on mycorrhizae growth. That's something that could have impacts for soil health. And so I just want to be really mindful of what's in the soil and what's being put on. Some other challenges are sourcing limestone. Many soils are on the acidic side in Western Washington, often below 5.5. And the recommendations are when soil pH is strongly acidic is to add limestone. And oftentimes you may be looking at a multi-year liming program. So that could be a little bit of a challenge. Instead of just 1 year of management, you're actually outlining a strategy that lasts multiple years. The next would be scale incorporate application. On the small to medium scale, people might need to source crop spreaders or spin spreaders. This may not be equipment they have available and they need to rent or purchase themselves. And different spreaders work for different types of limestone. You don't want to put powdered ag lime in a spin spreader. It will create a giant cloud of lime. not too useful. In the larger scale, sourcing liming trucks from agricultural outfits is often a popular route, but there's currently a bottleneck in Thurston County in that area, so there's challenges there as well. Another challenge that I point out is magnesium. It's often low, and it's really important to add, especially when you have low potassium. When you need to add potassium as well to avoid a condition known as grassitecny. It can lead to an imbalance in the forage quality and lead to problems with livestock nutrition. And so when low, the recommendation is to add at least 1 ton per acre of dolomite lime, a magnesium-rich form of limestone. However, it's difficult to source in the larger quantities that are often needed. And so we often have farmers who are just finding it challenging enough to find the quantities of agricultural limestone that they need. Dolomite lime is a bit rarer in our state. So some potential alternatives, there are forms of potassium fertilizer that also supply magnesium. So we try our best to find alternatives. And also it's really important as well to increase soil pH. One of the biggest correlations that we find is that kind of exchange capacity, which is important for all the nutrients like magnesium and calcium, is linked with pH. And this is some of the multi-year sample data that for samples in the program. So increasing that is important. So some final thoughts. So soil tests are often a jumping off point for future conversations. Often it leads to manure testing, matching manure testing with soil tests, as well as discussions about spreader rentals, making sure people have the equipment to implement the recommendations that we have. And there are many future areas of work. This is very much in development at Thurston CD, but looking into developing approaches like auto-generating graphics, so people aren't staring at a lot of numbers, but instead are looking at things in a more visual way. We're already using that in some of our vegetable tests. And then additional management options, lower input strategies that align nutrient management for area-friendly approaches. South-zone prairies are a very endangered ecosystem in Thurston County, Peterson County. And then also template automation, just ways to increase capacity. If you want to learn more on some of that stuff, we'll be giving a talk on March 13th on ways that we're doing that in Thurston Conservation District. And I don't know if we'll take questions at the end or if we can take some now.
Move on.
So, all right.
Thanks, Adam. All right, so this is a little bit, I want to be sure, even though this is a lightning talk, I'm clear that you know what I'm talking about. This is a program that's available to people. And I'm just going to take the time here just to introduce you to it. There's a funded project right now that's focused on increasing the resilience of grassland in the region. So I'm just going to give you a little overview. We have a big partner in the area that you might be aware of, Joint Base Lewis and Ford. There's a number of, and Adam alluded to this just at the end there, threatened and endangered species in the region. And a lot of these species are prairie associated, also generally inhabit grassland, not always just prairie soils. The connection between agriculture and the base is that the base is really keen that these species persist and thrive off base, and so that they can continue operations. So it actually creates a number of different funding opportunities to increase ag resilience and ag profitability viability within the region. So I've been pretty involved with a group called the Sentinel Landscape. These are common across the country. There's a number of different Sentinel landscapes at the intersection of habitat and military operations. Like I said, because of the off-base habitat the base wants to preserve, that creates a revenue stream for agriculture to help keep these businesses viable. There's three different parts of this project that you might benefit from. There's three different strategies that we're implementing. Strategy to improve the soil health of grassland soils and pasture soils, improve grassland productivity and resilience, and improve grazing management. So these are our overall options here. So we have some funding for a certain number of acreage to improve soil health. First one is 500 acres. And this could be implementing strategies like Adam just outlined. There's some, common deficiencies in soils, whether that's pH, micronutrients, maybe low biological activity. And we have funding to try to improve the soil health on 500 acres within the landscape. And don't just think on base, it's the surrounding areas, Grace Harbor, Mason, Lewis, maybe as far south as Cowlitz, Thurston, Pierce, would all be certain eligible areas. I'm going to go sort of skip over the possible improvements somewhat in the interest of time. But what I can tell you is that, we're trying to build on science-based practices. This is a long-term trial at Rothamsted in England, looking at the effect of lime on soil carbon sequestration, showing an increase of 2 to 20 times soil carbon in like top 20 centimeters of soil over a long period of time. It's taken at any point in time in these samples. So, that's a big sort of resilience factor when it gets back to what Doug was talking about in terms of soil organic matter in the soil, storing water, so on and so forth, many benefits. So we're trying to find the most effective means of improving soil health that will translate into resilience, whether it's to the climate extremes, water storing capacity, whatever it might be. So we're tying in this work with the Washington Soil Health Initiative. You'll hear from Danny shortly. They signed on to help. So we're going to get an advisory team to come up with the most effective strategies. This will be kind of operating over the next 3 years, roughly. So pretty good sized budget to do that. I'll skip over this, but we don't just have to look at the soil chemical properties. We can look at soil biological properties. There's mixed results trying to translate biofertilizers into field applications in a way that would translate meaningfully into soil health improvements. But they're still being looked at sort of globally. And there's something that we could definitely take into consider to try to improve, like the mycorrhizal associations in grassland soils, which have been demonstrated to be really important in terms of tolerating climate extremes. So, like I said, the soil health improvements, that's all right, it's actually 500 acres, and then support available soil fertilizers, foliar fertilizers, and biofertilizers. Second one is implementing or transitioning ground that's currently in continuous management for livestock into rotational grazing. So supporting things like purchase of fencing, doing paddock design consultation, and even the implementation. So that's supposed to be on 300 acres to impact on that over the next few years. And then, pushing the envelope too, how do we do more to really diversify our farming systems going to silvopasture in the form of agriculture? So we'll have an opportunity to try to impact 100 acres of implementation of silvopasture designs. Kind of similar sort of services available to the rotational grazing, some consultations. We're partnering with Agroforestry Northwest. And so we have some sort of expertise and capacity to help think about what are the appropriate species, what's the right spacing, how should we implement this pasture systems on the ground. And then can support everything from that consultation to even acquiring and helping install the material, the plant materials. So this is a photo actually out of Costa Rica. There's the upcoming, there's a conference coming up, Agroforestry, North American Agroforestry Conference is the 20th to the 22nd. It's in Turrialba. If you can't catch a plane to Costa Rica on short notice, you can participate via Zoom. And it's kind of unique where they're looking at the connection between temperate and tropical agroforestry systems and sort of exchanging ideas across that for the climatic gradient. So pretty cool stuff. And just some of the partners, and that's it. So if you're interested, I did put together a little bit of a sign-up sheet with your name, email, your farm, the number of acres you might have, that you want to sort of participate in this program. With that, I'll pass it on.